April 5th, 1722, Easter Sunday. Dutch explorers are sailing across the South Pacific in search of Australia when they spot land on the horizon.
The ship's captain, this Dutch explorer, Captain Roggeveen, comes across this spit of land in the South Pacific, and he realizes very quickly that this is not Australia. This is much smaller. It's only about 14 miles long. Didn't even show up on the map.
It's incredibly remote. It's 2,200 miles off the coast of Chile. The next closest island is Pitcairn Island, which is 1,300 miles away. It's like a speck in the middle of the vast Pacific.
Upon first glance, he's thinking, oh, it's just this barren spit of land. But the crew of Roggeveen's ship starts to notice smoke rising from the island.
Islanders sail out on canoes to greet the explorers.
The captain writes about these people in his logs. He writes that they're built very strong, they're very friendly, they have astonishingly white teeth, they've got these very unique hairstyles. Now, the captain, he starts to realize this island is unlike anything that he's ever encountered before.
Europeans were just sort of blown away by what they saw. They come there expecting to find native people maybe scrapping out a living. And you're struck instantly about how is this possible? How could anyone have made any of these statues, much less hundreds of them, on such scale? Doesn't seem possible.
The islanders call them moai. They're found nowhere else in the Pacific and nowhere else on Earth.
These 1,000 statues that mostly are dotted along the landscape on the coastal regions basically represent human figures.
Most people often talk about Easter Island as having the heads on the island, that the islanders made these heads and moved them as such. The reality is that all of the heads that we see are parts of full statues that have torsos and arms and bellies, but those parts are buried.
There are a variety of moai out there. Some that are very tiny, others that are almost 7 stories tall. Their sizes, although they range in how big and fat they are, the more average size is about 14 to 15 feet tall and somewhere around 10 to 20 tons in weight.
So we have this contrast between a place where we'd expect to find nothing, but to find some of the most spectacular archaeology in the world.
In his logs, Captain Roggeveen writes about these marvels that are these statues. He writes, quote, "These stone figures caused us to be filled with wonder, for we could not understand how it was possible that people had been able to erect them."
Whenever we see these types of construction projects that we know are intergenerational and are massive on a social scale, we have to ask the question, what is the meaning?
Clearly, the scope, the amount of work that went into making these statues shows that they're important and they're worth our investigation.
For hundreds of years, researchers have been trying to uncover the secrets behind Easter Island's iconic statues and the people who built them.
Some say that in order to understand the legend and the origin of the moai, you have to go back even further and try to understand the origin of the Rapa Nui in the Marquesas Islands. Legend has it that the king of the Rapa Nui is compelled to move his people from the Marquesas Islands to this new island in the South Pacific based on a wise man's dream. But perhaps it is possible that there are other factors at play here, ones that go beyond the scope of human imagination.
There's a natural tendency to wonder how the construction and transport of these statues is possible given the basic technology that consists of stone tools. You look at these things, you think, well, how could such a few small number of people with such limited technology possibly have crafted these gigantic things and moved them?
According to oral tradition, the moai were carved by a highly skilled group of artisans. But some theorists suggest that there had to be a more advanced culture involved in their creation.
The idea that giant monuments, like the ones found on Easter Island, were built by aliens is called the ancient astronaut theory. It suggests that an advanced race of beings came from another planet and is responsible for building enormous monuments around the world. Great pyramids, the Sphinx, and other giant monuments. What's really interesting is that all over the Marquesas Islands, which is where those 7 outward-facing moai are looking, there are several figures of their sky god Tiki who looks very alien-esque. And what's even more compelling is that there is a very similar figure on Easter Island.
People who ascribe to this ancient astronaut theory point to a central and important figure in Rapa Nui religious culture, Makemake, who is the supreme being. He's the creative force. There are rock carvings all around Rapa Nui, known as petroglyphs, that depict Makemake and his very distinctive extra-human features, such as a very large beak-like nose.
Some believers say that these non-human features are really proof that the Rapa Nui had encountered some alien civilization that had a very advanced form of engineering. When we see these megalithic structures all over the planet, you have to wonder, how did an ancient civilization, using only primitive tools, even pull it off?
Naysayers will argue that this is actually a civilization that are also very skilled engineers, and they do indeed have the imagination, have the tools, have the ability to create these gigantic works of art. But others still maintain that only a highly advanced civilization could be responsible for creating these very intricately designed gigantic statues, perhaps in their own image.
Whatever the moai's purpose, there's another question that perplexes researchers to this day. How on earth were these colossal statues, some weighing nearly 200 tons, moved into place?
These massive moai, many of them multi-ton rock figures, were moved as far as 10, 12 miles, depending on the route they took. This is absolutely phenomenal. These massive, colossal statues were moved to every part of the island.
Legend has it, what made the moai move was the chief's spiritual energy, or mana.
Oral traditions do suggest that the moai could have been commanded to move by the chief from their original place of creation within this quarry all the way across the island to their final resting place.
The oral tradition says the moai are walking. They're not on their back or on their stomach. They have to be up and moving. So now, this is in the 80s. This idea of how the statues moved really starts to dominate the archaeological community. Everyone wants to try to figure this out.
Pavel, a Czech engineer, was really intrigued by this idea that they could have been moved in a standing position and built some replicas in Czechoslovakia and showed that it was possible for a statue to be moved in an upright fashion. And he also replicated that experiment on the island in the 1980s, where he took an actual statue in an upright position and by a series of ropes, rotated it back and forth, sort of swivel fashion, and he could make it move forward. His approach was much like the way in which many people move a refrigerator from one side of a kitchen to another, sort of tipping it back and forth and shuffling it along.
And the statue was moved in this way, over flat ground in a slight incline. And he was able to do it rather well for short distances.
But the Rapa Nui had a much more difficult path to tread, upwards of 12 miles over challenging terrain.
One thing that I find fascinating was their creation of the Araote Moai, which translates to the Moai Road. It almost looks like a spider web leaving the quarry with all of these individual roads where most likely the land was leveled and rocks were put on the side of these roads.
From looking at construction methods that are used by other ancient civilizations around the world, there is certainly more than one way to move a giant piece of stone.